folks. My name is Dr. Aikens. I'm the oboe professor at Colorado Mesa University in Grand Junction. I'm here to talk to you about the All-State excerpts this year, which both happen to be Fairleign Etudes, the first 16 bars of the slow D major and the fast B flat major in the Voxman, pages 15 and 19. You can find those. You can also find both of these online at imslp.com for free. The Fairleign is up there. So if you can't afford that, it's a great place to find it. Let's start with the slow excerpt. Let's start with the D major on page 19. A couple of tricky things in this. One, I think the tempo is a good one that has been suggested. 63 to the dotted quarter note is a good speed. Helps us not to be too slow in this. But at measure 5, we run into a pretty difficult passage where you have to play both this scale up to your high C sharp and deal with a trill and a turn all at once and still fit that rhythm in time. So start with the basic rhythm. Start here so that you're comfortable playing those notes. You're comfortable with the high C sharp fingering, just 2 and 3, 1 on the right hand in your C key. Then we can add in the turn, so that's the D sharp and the E right before you start the 16th notes. So we get comfortable with where to place that. Then we can start to work to put a trill in before. And depending on what you're comfortable with, 1 or 2 turns is fine. I think in context I'm able to manage 2. But if you want just sort of a 5-note grouping, so going up to the F sharp, back to the E, down to the D sharp, and back, that's plenty. So that's the order that I like to work on that, and it just helps make more sense of everything that's going on in that bar. The rest of what's really difficult in this is how do we create this long line with direction and manage all of the downward slurs that are in this. And so I fall back on 2 fundamentals. 1 is our embouchure setup, and 2 is the energy that we create in our airstream. So for our embouchure, just think of that whistle shape that we're wanting to make. That'll help you get in the right spot. And then as you're playing the opening couple bars, think of blowing through down to the A. That's the lowest point that we have in the first 2 measures. So that we go all the way to that point. From there, if you look ahead, you've just played a lovely crescendo up to that high C sharp, and we've finished out that phrase. Now we've got these diminished 7th chords to deal with, starting around measure 12. So how to get to that? We have to be open and ready for those lower notes before we get to them. And C sharp, I know, looks like a terribly high note, but it's not. If you can think of being open and making a nice full sound there, that can take you straight down, and think of blowing through that descending line. This is opposite of what we're used to. As we go lower, we're getting bigger as opposed to coming away. From there, we can make a nice crescendo up to the bar where it's marked forte. That's measure 15, and it's not too bad after that. Band directors, I know, are tempted to always tell young oboists, "Oh, I want vibrato." I am here to tell you that while vibrato is wonderful, focus first on making a good sound with dynamics and direction in the line. That will help keep this interesting. And get us thinking about musically related things instead of just oboe-related things. If we flip over to page 15, the fast B-flat etude, the trick in this, other than just not rushing, is how do we manage some of these arpeggios, particularly the very last one that we have to do, going all the way up to high F. First, we get settled, I think, on which F fingerings we're going to use, and that depends on what your setup looks like. If you've got the left F option, there are some great places to plug that in that I think help help our right hand not get too clogged up with a lot of stuff to do. For instance, the second full measure, I like to use left def in that just to give my right hand a break from the E flat and the C sharp keys that we have to go to. If you look in measure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right before we go up to high E flat, we have to have forked F. That's the only fingering that makes sense there. So I don't care if forked F is not your favorite note, that is the one that is going to get you then to E flat without having to mess with fingerings. The full fingering for that is fine, half full 2, 3 on the left hand, 2 and 3 on your right hand, and your B key should work just fine in that context. I'm certainly not anti-forked F. If you watch on the video, you see me get to the B flat measure arpeggio. You'll see me using forked F all through that bar. But I'm trying to think of ways to make this interesting, since the only instruction he gives us in terms of dynamics is a forte. So a lot of times I follow the line, where if we're going down, we're getting softer, and if we're going up, we're getting bigger. So right from the beginning, we can start with a nice full sound, make sure that our pickup is in fact a 16th note, not an 8th note. It's not one. It's not that. So you can hear that already I start with a lot of energy, and then from there, and I'm starting to work down all the way into measure 5, which starts a new sequence where we have this ascending line that goes all the way up to high E flat. And I think we can just naturally follow that so that each one is a little bit bigger. From there, we can come back down as we float down the scale. We don't have to get super quiet, but it can relax, and that lets us restart the energy again on this chord progression that gets very interesting very quickly. We have B flat major. So that's one idea. Second idea on E flat major, and then this lovely diminished 7th chord. So that should be one of the biggest moments that we have up to that point. And then again, we can start a little bit less so that you have room to crescendo all the way up to your high F. And this is a very difficult arpeggio on oboe. It's tough to not have notes in between our A and our C particularly. There's no real shortcut for that, no alternate fingering options that we have, just good slow practice. I'd practice that bar both slurred and tongued, and go at a speed where you can do it without having to worry, am I in the right spot? Think of blowing air all the way down and through the low C. I know low C is a tough note to slur down to from F, especially whether you have left or forked. I don't know that I find a particular difference between the two of those, so whichever you're more comfortable with is the one you should use. And I do use full F for the high F, so that's half full and 2, and my A flat key, as well as 2 and 3 on the right hand, plus thumb octave. We'll get you that note. Lots of air, don't be nice. You can smile and you can pull lots of reed in to get that F to come out. We can break a lot of the rules of embouchure when we get up there that we like to think of sort of open O shape on the inside of our mouth normally when we play. When we get up to the F, I'm definitely thinking more of an E and lots of energy to make that happen. So I hope you find this helpful, and good luck with your auditions.